Our next speaker is Dr. Alan Koslow, a community activist who supports himself as a vascular surgeon. He will help you learn how rewarding it is to work at repairing the world. He is one of 10 that created the first March of Dimes walkathon, did a 500,000 signature petition that saved the original Star Trek, conceived of the first high school academic credit for community service program in the U.S., has saved 4 men's lives, not as a surgeon, and been in 4 live gunfire situations. What have you done today? the only person in USA to have won 3 Volunteer of the Year awards from 3 different organizations and does volunteer work at the synagogue, local NGOs, national political issues, and international medical rescue missions. In his free time, whatever free time he might have, is an amateur magician and organizes and attends sci-fi cons and listens to 175 podcasts. So please welcome Dr. Allen.
When I was a young kid and I went to Hebrew school, I learned the concept that Tikkun, Olam, repair the world, that God did not leave the world perfect, and it was for man to repair the world. And I have taken that to heart, and I have a lifetime of working to help to repair the world, and I hope I can inspire you to do the same with some of the things. It first started when I was 14, and I started working at Montefiore Hospital in the Bronx, where I worked in the emergency room, I worked in the operating room, and I worked in the surgical research lab. I actually wanted to be an exotic animal vet until then, and this converted me into deciding to go into surgery, and specifically vascular surgery. At that same time, I was going to high school at Jamaica High School, and this was in the turbulent times when there was a lot of protests. I actually, in the morning, would be on the protest on one side, and in the afternoon, I would be on the other side with the people I was protesting against in the morning. It was a great time to be growing up in New York City in the late 60s. But one of the things that I did was I was the president of the student council for the entire borough of Queens, 26 high schools, and God knows how many elementary schools and junior high schools. And through that, I got asked to be on a committee that we conceived of and organized the very first March of Dimes walkathon, which I am so proud of because it helps children with birth defects and has become the largest fundraiser in the history of the world. When I went off to college at Buffalo, I joined the first aid simulations team and did over 400 simulations to train local rescuers how to respond to rescues. At the same time, while I was there at Buffalo, I was also on the Red Cross Disaster Services, and I went down over 250 times when families were ripped from their lives, their houses were destroyed for one reason or another, and I would help them with the rest of the people from the disaster service in putting their lives together. It really showed me the importance of that personal contact with people. When I was in residence, my wife was really into horses, and I was asked if I wanted to help form the first medical physician team for the United States Equestrian, for the United States Olympics. And my wife, because she was into horses, I ended up becoming a physician for the United States Equestrian team and traveled all over the United States, Canada, Mexico, and Europe with the equestrian team. It was fantastic. But then after that, I ended up at Stanford University, and I just was walking through the medical library, and I said, "What's in this room?" And they said, "Oh, this some old medical instruments that were donated to the institution." And I went through over 500 medical instruments, cataloged them, figured out what they were, photographed them, and there's still an exhibit there. So I actually carried this forward when I went to National Institute of Health to do a research fellowship, and I went to the Smithsonian, and they also had a closet with 150 instruments that the experts at the Smithsonian could not figure out what they were. Over the 3 years there, I figured them out. When I went to my first academic job was at Loma Linda University, and while I was there in Redlands, California, the Historic Preservation Society was completely gutted. I organized a committee that we fought this, and we got the funding reimbursed for that. As I mentioned in the thing, I organized the March of Dimes walkathon. I was asked to go back at the 30th anniversary, the 31st time in New York City, and I was the Grand Marshal with Joe Namath of the 30th anniversary walkathon. It was really heady stuff. But then after that, I really got the bug to do international medical missions. And so my first international medical mission was to Alaska, where we went to an Aleutian island that had no medical care, and they had to fly back to Anchorage to get it. And we were there for 2 weeks giving medical care to the Eskimos that lived in the Aleutian Islands. That led me to go to Israel, where I went a total of 6 more times, to the only hospital, and this would be a fascinating story to talk about as a whole talk, that is 50% Palestinian and 50% Jewish. And it was just absolutely amazing seeing the interaction of the two different cultures in one hospital. Only place in Israel that happens in. But then the first disaster one that I went to was in El Salvador, where there was 27,000 people killed in a few seconds with an earthquake. And I went down there with the state health department from here and really got the bug to do emergency disaster missions. After I came back from that, there was an issue that there was a stem cell ban of doing any research in the state of Iowa. And I was the lead person in lobbying the state legislature to overturn that ban. And we ended up not only overturning it, but about a $12 million budget for that. And that same summer, after coming off of that success, I went to the, which I go to every year, the world's largest science fiction convention, and I started a blood drive, which now gets 10,000 units of blood every single year during this 4-day weekend with 75,000 people. And it's the single largest blood drive in the United States that I started. Well, we all know what happened in Haiti, and literally in a few seconds, 250,000 people lost their lives, and about 500,000 people had severe limb injuries to the point of about 100,000 losing their limb. Well, I went there, and it was just absolutely one of the most emotional, devastating experiences I've ever had in my life, seeing all these people laying in an open field with dirt, just with limbs hanging off and half amputating them, trying to save them. It was very, very emotional to me, very emotional time. Just this week, a week ago, I got back from Guatemala, and I'm starting a new phase. This is what I'm going forward. I'm starting an NGO, which is going to go to third world countries and help them bootstrap their medical care by taking people who live in the community, teaching them how to be lay medical professionals, doing surveys, figuring out what they need, and supporting them so that the people in the community can do that. And finally, this Saturday, Richard Dawkins is coming to town to kick off a campaign where we're going to focus on the Iowa caucuses to do separation of church and state and to really push the presidential candidates into accepting that we need a law of separation between church and state. So come Saturday if you want to hear what the campaign's about. And thank you very much.